Hello and welcome here today at A-Bit Hex, the YouTube stream where you learn everything about crypto in general, but specifically the Richard Hart ecosystem. And then, of course, I love to talk about broad crypto as well. Today, you have already seen it in the title. It's going to be really interesting. I invited Crypto7 here on our show to talk today about all the FUD that is going on. I have the feeling right now there's max pain going on, and I think Crypto7 is the perfect person to talk about all of that. So with no further ado, let's bring him up and welcome him to our stream here. How's it going, Seven?
Great, thank you. Thanks very much for having me on. Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, I really like your content. At the little I've seen, I really like you and the positivity and things. And in fact, it was me that suggested coming on your channel. So thanks very much. Because as I say, I've just seen you briefly in the past, and I thought, what a really nice guy, and really consistent as well. And I thought, why haven't I done anything with this guy? So I reached out to you a couple of days ago, didn't I? And you were like, yeah, cool, let's do it. Yeah, so nice. But yeah, I thought I'd just mention that it was me asking to come on your show. So respect to you, man.
Thanks, bro. Well, I said in the green room before, I'm so focused right now creating content. That's why I do not look too much left and right. And then sometimes what happens is that the FUD or the max pain goes by me. But I have seen you have just talked about that topic yesterday in your live stream. And then I took some interesting things out of there. And I want to discuss all of that today with you. So let me look into my questions, because I knew I want to start with a really banger question that starts off the whole stream. And this question is crypto going to zero? Crypto7, what do you think? The max pain has not really hit yet. Richard Hart is saying 11K in pray, and we are all shaking right now, right? Like everybody is crying out loud. So what is your idea? What do you think? Is crypto going to zero?
Is crypto going to zero? No, I don't think crypto is going to zero. I've seen a couple of bear markets before, and this just feels really, really familiar. Loads of, to use a Matrix quote, just tons of deja vu here. And it's kind of like you feel like you're getting near to max pain, and then you kind of know it when you see it. And in Hex, we're seeing it now. This is the capitulation. This is definitely the max pain, and we're bottoming out now. But no, I mean, crypto is certainly not going to zero. You only have to look back. You only have to zoom out a little bit and look at sort of how much some of these cryptos were worth just 2 or 3 years ago, and they're still way higher now. I think Polygon was like half a cent a few years ago, and it's still what, 70 cents, 80 cents now. I mean, it's the same with a lot of the other cryptos as well. Even Ethereum, it's still what is it, around $1,200? I don't look very much, but around $1,200. I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, a few years ago it was $80. So I think in March 2020, which isn't even 3 years ago, it flashed down to $80. So no, I mean, they're definitely crypto's definitely here to stay, and everyone accepts that now. It's the new asset class, and it's being described as such. And it's the new asset class, and the institutions haven't lost interest. I was listening to Raoul Pal in it recently. In fact, Funding Jim tweeted that stream out from Raoul Pal, and he was saying that he's talking to the funds who are talking to the institutions, and they're still very interested despite FTX. They're still hovering. They've got their cash guns pointed towards crypto. They're just waiting for the regulation to be able to step in a meaningful way. But that doesn't mean they won't step in at all. And the kind of money that they've got is just insane. It just blows your mind. And that's why a lot of people who get very bearish at this time, and you can see why, there's plenty to sort of get bearish about at the moment. There's that nasty recession word, and you can see why people would get nervous. But say, oh, no, we're in a recession, blah, blah, blah. But you've got to bear in mind that even just the distribution, just a little bit of allocation of the distribution of funds away from stocks and bonds and gold and silver and all the rest. I mean, they've got 120 billion just in stablecoin pointing towards crypto. So they're just waiting for a bit more regulatory clarity, because they can't be offside with the regulators before moving in, as Raoul Pal says, in a meaningful way. And Raoul Pal actually listed a number of institutions that are just hovering and waiting in the wings, and people he specifically talked to, which I found very reassuring. He actually mentioned 5 funds who he's been in discussion with. He named the funds that are talking to the institutions. They haven't lost interest at all. They're just waiting for the clarity before stepping in a meaningful way. But that doesn't mean, by the way, a meaningful way means like blow your mind amount of money going into crypto, but they might
Well, I
break
have
a
to
little.
stop you right here, though,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm trying to like make some excitement with this question: is crypto going to zero? We are all doomed. We have max pain.
No, it's
Everybody's
not going to
crying,
zero.
and you bring all your positivity with the big institutions that are not in yet, but they're waiting here, and this is putting up some hopium. Let's save the hopium for later. Let's talk about some gloom and doom first. And here, I think we have a good question from Baba. He's saying, hey Hexicans, who was the idiot who sold today? And
Good question. That is a good question.
we have the whales that are getting shaken out. We have the normal retailer that has been in Hex since 3 years that is also been shaken out. That's why we see those low prices. 96% Hex is down. So what do you think? Like, how low can Hex go? I've seen yesterday you talked about the button being in. So let's talk about the button in Hex. Do you think it could slowly be in now?
I don't think I was saying the bottoms necessarily, and I think I've lost my right to call bottoms anyway because I've got it wrong in the past due to the thinking that we were going to get the PulseChain launch in May. I think the question's brilliant. I mean, it's funny he should say that, the question you just showed up on the screen, because I was thinking the exact same thing. Who are the idiots selling Hex at 2 cents? And it is absolutely crazy. It's actually crazy to be selling, what is it, after a 96% dip in such a strong cryptocurrency. But as I say, I've seen a couple of bear markets before, and this is what you get. Nobody wanted Cardano at 2 cents, and then it went all the way to 3.15 in the last bear market. And nobody wanted Ethereum at $80. And it's just how it goes. I think a lot of Hexicans have got bored and impatient, and they have been duped by some of the sort of pump and dumps you can get in a bear market, because really all the cryptos are just waiting for the narrative flip. They're all waiting for the Fed to pivot and things. And any price action to the upward side in a bear market is generally it's manipulation, or it's this transfer from one crypto to another, the musical chairs. But really, there's not going to be any meaningful gain for any of us until we start to move further into this accumulation year, which we're in now, or we get some more steps from the Fed in terms of the interest rate, or we get the narrative flip in terms of Hex and PulseChain. There is, to some degree, certainly, that we could see a very good year for Hexicans and PulseCans, of course, in 2023. We're already in the accumulation year. Anyway, you go back to your question. Sorry.
So I heard you mentioning just now the word narrative flip. I want to go into this as well. But before we go into this topic, what do you think Richard Hart said about the bottom? He called the bottom twice. We will talk about that later on as well. But let's talk about this bottom top call. Right, when he called it, then a couple of days later there was a new all-time high of Bitcoin, and Richard Hart did not account for that. I don't know if it was a couple of days or a couple of weeks, I don't know exactly, but this led Richard Hart to say, well, maybe the bottom should be in right now, but maybe they take the other top to then count for that. So what do you make out of that? Do you know the specific situation that I mean?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I call it the missing 7 months. There was a 7 months gap between when we should have got the top at 64K, when we got the euphoria, when we got that normal euphoric blow off top that we normally see with crypto, always have seen before, and then 7 months later we got the Judas candle, I think Richard describes it, which was effectively guys like Michael Saylor were going so strongly off what Plan B was saying that they were effectively borrowing money. Well, not effectively, they were borrowing money to get Bitcoin at like 60K because Plan B said that we were going to at least 100. And that's what, not just Michael Saylor, of course, but famously, Richard likes to tease Michael Saylor over. It was a crazy move. And of course, now in hindsight, and as we sort of live at the bottom of the logarithmic regression band, we realize how crazy it was for people to be buying Bitcoin $60,000, just as it was really for people to be buying Hex at 50 cents. But and so that's what caused that. It was a distortion. The interesting thing is whether or not that means we count the start of the bear market from April 2021 when we got the 64K, or whether we should count the start of the bear market from November 2021 when we got the 69K. I'm leaning more towards the I'm leaning more towards the November 2021. Unfortunately, I liked the idea that we could speed up the bear market by 7 months. It's okay. We take that 7 months off. It makes a big difference. It makes a big difference. But I think it doesn't look like it.
So let's look a little bit about the narrative of HEX. Maybe we can go into the past 3 years ago when everything started. How was the narrative of HEX in the past, and how do you see it playing out right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's really, really, really interesting. The narrative on HEX and the narrative around Richard Hart. I mean, Richard Hart, because I see that they're kind of fused, aren't they? They're two sides of the same coin. You can't really separate HEX from Richard Hart, and you can't really separate PulseChain from Richard Hart. I mean, Richard Hart was a Bitcoin maxi. He was a famous Bitcoin maxi, obviously very intelligent, very well spoken, very articulate, and he took so a number of the guys to task, like Craig Wright and a couple of the others as well, but most famously Roger Ver as well. I think he locked horns with, but most famously Craig Wright. And so Richard was known as being sort of a significant figure in the Bitcoin space. And at the time he was a maxi, you know, he was not even keen on Ethereum. And then he decided, he saw the numbers for himself. He saw the progress. He saw the progress within Ethereum, but also he saw the intransigence within Bitcoin, the fact that they just were not adapting quick enough, the spaghetti code issue, all the things we know about that Richard says about Bitcoin. So he decided to pivot and he decided to launch his own crypto. I think that because he was a Bitcoin maxi, he obviously was still sort of had one foot in that world, and he decided to do the airdrop to the Bitcoiners, and they didn't like that very much. And I think he's always been a bit hung up about, and they then turned his back on him.
When you say they didn't like that very much, here I think we have to differentiate between the whole Bitcoin community, which didn't like it, but the people that free claimed their HEX with their Bitcoin, they were really happy. And I remember 3 years ago when this was going on, when the people could claim their HEX for their Bitcoin that they had in their wallet, then it was actually a lot of Bitcoin that showed up and said, "Hey, I want to claim my HEX."
Oh, that's a really, that's a good distinction to make. I like that. Well, we need to hear more about those people. I mean, you know, that's great. I like that, and that's the positive side of the story, isn't it? And what I'd be saying is, if I was doing Richard's PR, which I'm not paid to do Richard's PR. He has asked me about PR stuff a few times, obviously freely. I would be saying let's hear more of these people that profited from the airdrop that were in the Bitcoin community. I mean, I don't want to get onto a conversation about it, but I thought that was what the sort of Jack Levy angle was about, and I think that was what it was supposed to be about, wasn't it? But I don't want to go there.
But let's continue with the narrative that it was in the past. We have not touched yet where Richard Hart invented HEX. You talked about how he moved from Bitcoin to Ethereum because he saw the numbers, and then at one point he started with HEX, right? So when did you? What do you think? How was the narrative in the beginning when HEX started? Because obviously everybody was calling Richard Hart a scammer. They were calling HEX a scammer. It was unbelievable for them that a smart contract would produce coins, and those coins out of thin air would be given to the people. That was outrageous, right? So this was the narrative back then that I think now has changed.
Yeah, I think some of the narrative, I think the narrative was misunderstood. I think maybe it wasn't explained clearly enough to people of sort of average intellect. And I think that people thought that they were going to be receiving, the critics were saying that the ROI was being paid in dollars, I think, but of course it was inflation from the HEX itself, and I think that wasn't clearly understood. And I think even now I hear big YouTubers, I think Crypto Wendio was saying it a couple of days ago, was saying that sorry, some of the decorations just fell down. She was saying that from what she was saying, I think she still thinks that you've got to be locked up for 15 years, or, you know, that staking is compulsory, which of course it isn't, or that you've got to stake for a long period. So I think there's still a misunderstanding, but I think some of it's probably curried by the critics. It's probably, I don't know whether the Eric Walls of this world understand that you can be staked for a day, and that, you know, that the people who stake are just benefiting from the inflation, or if they're conveniently not understanding it so that they can criticize Richard Hart and Hex. I'm not really sure about that, but I think that the more we can make it clear to people, the harder it becomes for people to criticize it.
I think so too. In the beginning, it seemed to me that Hex was really hard to understand for the new people because there was nothing like this before. And then this has changed a lot once we told them, look, it's a certificate of deposit, just like the band, and so on and so on. So I think the narrative has changed a lot. And then what I always like to go back when I think about the past of Richard Hart of Hex, that well, it came out, it was all a scam. Hex was not traded on a lot of exchanges. And then Richard Hart did something unbelievable. He put a lot of liquidity on Uniswap, and Hex was the #1 liquidity pair on Uniswap. And now, a couple of months later, we have seen what happened with Uniswap. It basically took the whole DeFi and brought it to the bull market. And Richard Hart made Uniswap popular. I think this is really, really important to bring that to the table, to teach the people this is really what was going on.
I totally agree.
You know what?
But can I just stop? Can I just jump in? That is such a good
Yeah.
point. That is such a good point. Why aren't we all pushing that more? That is such a good point, Abit. And I think you benefit from having been around in the AA phase and things. And I got into Hex through PulseChain and stupidly didn't get into Hex at the beginning. But there's nothing you can do about that. Show me somebody who's made a lot of money in crypto, and I'll show you somebody who's made loads of mistakes in the past. Show me somebody who's got tons of money in crypto, and I'll show you people who've lost so much money. It's embarrassing. The key thing with crypto is you've just got to make sure that you get slightly more right than you get wrong. And, I've been dollar cost averaging down into Hex, as everyone knows. I'm quite famous for it. Even the mainstream channels seem to know I was calling the bottom for Hex too early. I heard Michael Supo, who 4 or 5 years ago was one of the biggest crypto YouTubers, mentioning me today. He was like, oh yeah, Crypto 7, the guy who's always calling the bottom for Hex. And he had like a couple of 100,000 subscribers on YouTube 5 years ago. He switched over to Twitch now, really nice guy. But anyway, it's quite funny. So even the mainstream channels know that I'm too bullish on Hex. But it won't really matter, because once the price takes off, then it's irrelevant, because the price is going to explode. And what you were DCAing to, I just wanted to be safe because I want to make sure of it. I want to make sure of it in this bull market, and so that's where I'm at. If you've got $1,000 and you've got to make it work absolutely to the maximum for you, so that hopefully you might get 500x, might get $500,000 out of it, then I suppose you want to maybe, and you're 23 or something, you can take the risk and hope it's going to keep going down. The problem with Hex, of course, is you could wake up tomorrow, very, very possible / likely, and it'll be 10 cents, because there'll be a certain point. I mean, the more it goes down now, the more likely is that at a certain point, a big player is just going to go, right, that's it, I'm going to front run this, I'm having this, 1.8, 1.7, this is cheap enough, I'm going now. And then everyone's just going to go, and it'll be so obviously a V bottom. It will be so obvious that it is a bottom. So you could literally go to bed, particularly if you've had a few drinks the night before, and wake up and Hex is 10, 12 cents, and you'll contemplate whether or not to buy, whether or not you've missed the bottom, and then you look again and it's 20 cents and you'll have to buy. So, I just didn't want to miss out on that, really. But anyway, go back to your points and things. I really like this angle that you came up with about the difference, the way that Richard Hart is perceived in the things.
How I frame it is that Richard Hart is innovating crypto since years and years and years. He did it when he was a Bitcoin maxi. He did it when he then moved on to Ethereum. He did it really, really big when he started Hex. And then he basically started the bull run by making Uniswap popular. I think this is the way. And then once Ethereum started to suck, he said, I'm going to fork it. And that's what he did. And this is what we are waiting for. Let me ask you one more question about the narrative, because I heard you talking about the narrative on a scale. You used the scale, I think 1 to 10, and then you said it's 8 or 9. Did I understand it correctly, or am I wrong here?
Yeah. What you'll hear a lot of people talking about, investors particularly, is the narrative around a crypto, and we've all heard that. And so a narrative is so important that a lot of the investors call certain cryptos narrative coins. So the best performing cryptos are generally narrative coins. Not always, but generally. You don't hear of coins being called use case coins or tokenomics coins or cutting edge technology coins, but you do hear of this narrative coin, and it's a phrase that comes from the investment community. And so I thought, well, seeming as the narrative is so important around Hex and PulseChain, let me just write down what I think the current narrative is. And it literally took me about 30 seconds, back of an envelope thing. I just sort of had, waiting for testnet v3, still waiting for PulseChain, too much twerking. And sorry?
Documentary?
The documentary. We're waiting for the documentary, but the documentary should be soon. But we're waiting for that as well. And so I wrote down the narrative, and to be honest, right now the narrative isn't very good, and I gave it 2 out of 10. But when I wrote down all these things, I thought, blimey, they could all completely change in a few weeks. And some of the narrative around Hex is stuff outside of Hex, but it affects Hex as it affects all cryptos. So things like the FTX FUD, the Binance FUD, the FTX contagion, I should say, but the Binance FUD, because I think it is FUD. I've left $10,000 on Binance. I'm not worried about it. It's just the little bits of crypto here and there. I just haven't been asked to set up wallets, individual wallets for them all, and send them all bloody over and pay the gas fees. I've just left them there, and so I think that there's no issues there with Binance.
And what was the issue here with Binance, or what was the so-called FUD about Binance? I totally missed on that.
I think that once we got the FTX situation, then there was an expectation that all exchanges should have to be able to prove their proof of reserves. In other words, show exactly what they're backed up by. There's a few issues with that. Firstly, it's never been an expectation in the past, and there are you can lose competitive advantage if you're too revealing, and some of the accountancy and some of the accounting practices and some of the practices around exchanges are different to, say, for instance, a PLC or something that would normally show its books and things. But I think that Binance has got the money, let's put it that way, and that's being tested and has been tested anyway. I think over 80% of crypto has now left exchanges. I mean, you mentioned the success of Uniswap, and that's a really important point. Uniswap has actually overtaken Coinbase for profitability. And in terms of gas fees, in terms of profitability, it must be insane, because Uniswap must be very lean in terms of the number of people. It must be a very lean operation. And yet they are actually making more in Ethereum fees than Coinbase now. And Coinbase is very, very, very top heavy in terms of staff. I think they've got thousands of staff, Coinbase. So yeah, the future's really bright for people, particularly people that sacrifice for PLSX or are thinking of getting into PLSX on week 1 or week 2 or whatever, or month 1, whenever.
You were mentioning Coinbase and Uniswap here and make a little comparison. I think that's actually not too far off, because we have seen in the last bull round the very first time that a smart contract like Uniswap has more volume than Coinbase, and I thought that was really, really cool. And then now we are talking about PulseX and Uniswap. Let's see if PulseX could have more volume.
Links to your excellent point, Abit, about how basically Uniswap can thank Richard Hart, because Richard Hart made Uniswap popular with Hex, and now Uniswap is almost top dog. I mean, they've gone ahead of Coinbase, for goodness sake. I mean, that's just insane. I mean, Coinbase is huge, as we all know.
Exactly. So let's wrap up with the past, and I think we do that with the things that were just happening with Celsius, with FTX. Do you think with what happened with Celsius and FTX, and especially because Richard was warning everybody about them for years, that this has changed the narrative from Richard Hart, how the outside world sees Richard Hart now, since he was right again?
That's a really interesting question, and really, really good question. And I think the honest answer is not yet. And I think it's because currently we're all so, or rather the wider crypto are so subdued by FTX and Celsius and everything else, that people are sort of like seeing it, finding it hard to celebrate anything really. And I think 2022 was the year that will be the year that everyone realized that self-custody was the way to go. But it's 2023 where everyone will wake up to who it was that told them, which is Richard Hart, who it was that made Uniswap popular, which is a brilliant comment you made earlier. I love that. I'm bottling that. I'm nicking that. And that was Richard Hart. And I think that Richard Hart, he's starting to get the credit he deserves. He's been getting the credit on crypto banter and things like that. one of the, going back to sort of how the narrative around Richard Hart, I think a very significant event this year was when Ivan on Tech was talking to Richard and said, look, I really like the hex code. And I find it interesting and curious that a lot of the things that you were criticized for, the Ethereum devs have actually nicked your ideas around staking and things. And Richard was like, man, thanks very much, because nobody's mentioned that, you know. So, and of course, Ivan on Tech is very respected. I think he's got about 700,000 subscribers on YouTube, and all the other successful, because most of the crypto channels, they are actors. They're people that are good at talking like me. They know nothing about technology and they know nothing about coding. But Ivan, of course, was coding since he was a wee lad. And so if he says, look, Hex is cool, Richard's cool, then the altcoin twins who are actually actors, or Coin Bureau, who I believe Coin Bureau is an actor as well, and of course BitBoy, you know, BitBoy couldn't code to save his life. They're going to come in line. They're going to step in line. Well, BitBoy already has. So yeah, the future's bright for Richard, but right now it just feels a lot like the capitulation event. I think Richard's ill in bed with a cold, and everyone's sort of like squabbling, and it just feels like the capitulation event. And obviously I've got a lot of people messaging me saying, should I buy? Because I can advise people on, you know, personally. And I'm saying to my personal friends, yes, this is it. This is the moment, you know. You know, we'd all like to have a crystal ball and be able to know exactly when the bottom is. Life doesn't work that way, but the gains are so high anyway, it doesn't really matter. You just need to make sure you've got an exposure to the key cryptos like Hex. And of course, going back to this narrative thing, that the narrative is going to flip violently, as in violent price rise violently, because once we get testnet v3, we've effectively got a timescale. Once we've got a timescale, all the traders are going to wade back into Hex because they want the doubling. Of course they want the doubling, and we've got that sort of 8 events which are going to pump the price up to Hex. So the narrative is going to flip completely. So yeah, I think it's a really fantastic time to be into Hex, and goes back to that very first question you had from somebody who said, "What? Who's the idiot selling at 2 cents?" God knows who's selling at 2 cents. It's just hilarious, but that's what happens.
Let's go back to the narrative flip. I have heard that word the first time from you, so I would like you to explain it a little bit more. What is a narrative flip, and what are the specific things that you think could make this narrative flip in the future in our favor for Richard Hart?
Yeah, I mean, the flip is the right word, because it suggests it's going to be turn on a dime. It's going to be a complete 180. It's going to be a complete flip, a complete flippening. We're going to go from a narrative which isn't particularly good to almost perfect. The only way, literally within a few weeks, and it could take a few months, but it could equally be all of the things that I listed around the narrative could completely resolve. And as I say, the narrative isn't just the narrative around Hex. You got to bear in mind, a lot of the investment into crypto is going to come from people outside of crypto. So there's almost like 2 hurdles that the horse has got to jump over, if you like. So the first hurdle is the macro picture has got to improve a little bit, and then the second hurdle is, you know, Richard Hart's going to have to get testnet v3 out and that sort of thing. But so for instance, the tax loss harvesting, that will be resolved in a couple of weeks. If Binance is still standing in a few weeks' time, and I certainly hope it is, because I'm openly saying that Crypto 7's got 10K, and that's honestly the case, still on Binance. So if Binance is still standing in a few weeks after everyone's been pulling all their money out of Binance, then that FUD will completely resolve as well. People will be completely, another thing around the narrative around Hex is FTX at the moment, because it just shines over everything, or shades everything, I should say. So we've been talking about FTX since the 6th of November when it collapsed. So by the time we get into January, which is in a few days, everyone's going to be sick to death of talking about it. Already the big channels are working out that most of the Binance FUD is manipulated by mainstream. We're at that point in the market now where people are sort of trying to FUD the key cryptos as well to get the best possible prices. It's happening with Solana at the moment. There's a lot of FUD going towards Solana because people want it for less than $10, 10 cents, whatever it is, and they want it for 8 and 9. And it's the same with Hex as well. So there's a lot of FUD heading towards Hex, but you just got to have to decide whether you think it's a lifetime opportunity, or whether or not You want to be selling at 2 cents. You certainly don't want to be selling at 2 cents.
Can you talk a little bit more about the tax FUD, the taxes that you were just mentioning? Because we have Crypto Compassion here in the chat. He's saying people could also be selling for tax purposes weekly left in 2022. But I think this is different that you were mentioning on, right?
No, he's talking about the exactly same thing. He say it's a tax loss end of year tax loss harvesting. Crypto Compassion's bang on. It's exactly the same thing as I'm referring to. So in the States, there's this perverse situation where, particularly if a crypto hasn't been profitable, it's actually quite a good idea. If you sell it, you can actually write off all the tax. It's a thing in the States, and effectively it can cause a real problem, which is why the Santa rally is a bit of a myth, a bit like Santa Claus is a myth. It doesn't actually exist. People talk about the Santa rally and things. There's very, very few Santa rallies, because actually, generally, with this perverse incentive to sell your crypto at the end of the year in the States, it actually pushes a price down. So there's that, and that will be resolved. There'll be the FTX. Nobody will be talking about FTX anymore, because all the mainstream channels are getting lots of clicks talking about FTX, but nobody will want to listen to it anymore come January. And it's very distracting and very dangerous, because right now we're at the bottom of a bear market. We're undoubtedly at the bottom of a bear market. HEX has been in bear market since September 2021. And that's going to sound a long time away once we get to 2023 in a few days' time, isn't it? So we have to be around the bottom for HEX. And we know that Richards did his best to went as far as he can as a founder of a crypto to indicate that he thought 2.8 was the bottom. So that was good enough for me. If we're able to get a little bit more, a bit lower, then that's just a bonus, really, I suppose. But, you know.
No, that's really the question. How low can HEX go, right? And let's look into the next question here. The price of HEX, really, really interesting. We are at around 2 cents, and we are seeing max FUD in the market. And you said something really interesting that I do not agree totally. You said if the price of HEX goes down even further, then we have to adjust in our head what could be the next all-time high. Because you said if the price goes lower, then the all-time high that we had in our head will probably be lower as well. But I actually do not agree. I say if we are going lower right now because we are flushing out all those weekends, I believe we should have a higher all-time high than we even imagined in the past. Because I always get the question, can HEX do another 10,000x? What do you think?
I'm right on this one. If the floor gets pushed down, then the ceiling gets pushed down as well a bit. So if we go a lot lower, then we won't get a $10 HEX. When I was streaming with Crypto Coffee a few days ago, he was saying he thought we could get potentially a $10 HEX, and not if we go down to a half a cent or something, because everything has to be in balance. So if the floor is pushed down massively now for HEX further still, then the ceiling gets pushed down as well, because everything has to be in equilibrium, everything has to be in balance. But we're both right. But hang on, we're both right, because you're conflating two things here. In terms of the savage gains, which is all we're here for, because of course we're all here for the tech, aren't we? We're here for the gains. In terms of the mad gains, so that we can all retire and travel the world and things, the lower it goes, the better. It gives the opportunity for another 10,000x for HEX, which I think Richard said he quite liked the idea of it being a possibility when he was with Miguel at the bar in the States. So yes, we could still get the gains, which is all that matters, but not necessarily to as high a dollar number. But that doesn't matter. It's all about the gains, isn't it? So long as this is why it's so important to be picking up now, because the lower it goes from here, the lower the floor is pushed down, the lower the ceiling goes down as well. Do you see? But the multipliers are still there, and even more likely if we go lower, even more likely that we could attain the numbers. Yeah. So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, to make a new all-time high on the dollar price, to say, let's say HEX could be like $400, that probably doesn't make too much sense. But what you agree with is that yes, if the price goes lower, we can have those 10,000 X's again, right? It's all about the X's anyways. We do not care about the end dollar price too much, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally, friend. It's all about that. It's all about the gains, really, isn't it? I mean, we'll still go much higher than 56 cents. We'll still smash the all-time high, but and we'll get insane gains. But we won't go as high. And that's just a fact of life, I'm afraid.
So all my questions about the narratives are gone. Let's go into the chat, and then I have other questions here prepared as well. One question really specific about Hex from Atlatine. Hi guys, Chris said on stream before that the origin address is a feature of Hex. Can you explain why it is a feature and how it's a good thing? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. It's a feature, not a bug. It's an anti-rug pull mechanism. So effectively, you can't get a couple of billionaires come in. I mean, Hex is wonderful anyway because we're devoid of venture capitalists, which is the malaise of most cryptos, that they've had this venture capitalist funding. So at a certain point, they have a fiduciary duty to sell on your heads, and we saw that with Solana, where some of the Solana OGs were joking about how they were basically going to dump their bags on us, and sure enough, that's what they did. So that's the problem with Richard, because he was already super wealthy. He's able to fund it himself, and and the so the origin address is an anti-rug pull mechanism, so that if somebody did want to act maliciously on the price of Hex, it's much more difficult for them because they don't have as high a proportion of they can't turn the ship as powerfully as an individual. They're not as significant. So they could never, you could never have a situation where somebody, if you compare a crypto to a company, I suppose it makes more sense. So for instance, nobody could have a controlling share of Hex, because no matter how wealthy you are, not even Elon Musk, because the origin address, and we can only speculate who owns the origin address, but the origin address is not up for grabs. So even Elon Musk couldn't buy tons of Hex and then dump tons of Hex and crash the price to zero. So it's one of those cryptos that's it's probably the only one really that's totally immune from that sort of malicious price crashing, and hopefully that
also
answers
what
the
we
question.
have seen, I think so, and everything was totally right when it comes to that. And obviously there are many more features of the OA. One of the features that I really like is that the OA acts as a benevolent address, right? It does what is right for the Hex ecosystem. The first time we have seen that was in even before the big payday. The big payday was programmed code that would say, if you have T-shares on that day, then you will get extra coins. And everybody was really excited because we saw, oh wow, I have this much T-shares, I will get that many coins. And then what the OA did, it was staking their own Hex for a period of time, so that the OA would get a couple of T-shares, which ended up in less coins for the Hexicans that staked just for a couple of days, right? And this is actually really important to understand, because if inflation gets paid out to the staker class and the staker class has paper hands, then the price goes down. But when the OA holds those coins, it's actually holding really strong, because we have never seen the OA sell a single coin. And that's why I'm also saying the OA is a feature, not a bug. I think that's really good put.
Thank you.
And then I saw somebody here, now I obviously lost the comment, but what would you say about something like, no, it was not this comment, about are you using indicators, are you using charts to say, okay, the bottom could be there and there? Because somebody here is saying that there is not much support until 007. Is that true? What do you think?
I think doing TA on Hex is very difficult. If we're honest about it, I think it's very difficult. I think that ultimately investors look for, we talked about the narrative. What's the narrative? At the moment, the narrative isn't good around Hex, so they're holding back. Until the narrative changes, we're going to keep bleeding down. But at the same time, there's going to be enough people that realize that certain prices. I mean, to mention Michael Sipo, and Michael Sipo slipped up and had to admit he'd been buying Hex today, which I think was quite a nice admission, because he teases me about calling the bottom, but he said, yeah, I was watching it last night, and it was it went from 2.2 to 2.1 to 2 and then 1.9. And I thought, well, how does he know so well? Why is he watching the price so closely? That's literally in the car. Well, my daughter was riding a horse. I was like, well, why does he know so well? He goes, yes, I did buy a bit actually, So, people are buying, but I think there's going to be some huge buy orders, aren't there? And then once one big player buys, then it's going to go completely. I mean, I don't know how low it could go, but you got to imagine that there's going to be a lot of buying once we get to about 1.5 and obviously 1 and that sort of thing. I mean, I would just wait and see.
Well, crypto can go higher than we ever imagined. When
Yeah.
Hex started, we thought it would be amazing. It would be just phenomenal if Hex could ever reach 1 cent. And then it went up to 55 cents, right? So in this time, I always had the narrative, oh man, so much Hex is being staked for longer and longer and longer. Obviously, there's no Hex in the pockets of the normal people anymore, so nobody can sell. And this is why we went up 10,000x. At least that's what was my idea. And today I understand that the staking is really more of a narrative, right? What only matters in crypto is buying and selling. And we are seeing that Hex is also doing 96% dips, just like other cryptocurrencies as well.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of cryptos that dropped a lot more than Hex. I mean, Gala is one. Gala's dropped a lot more than Hex, and people talk about that as a blue chip crypto that's going to do really, really well, etc. You know, perfectly positioned as a platform for metaverse, etc., gaming. So it's quite funny. No, I mean, a lot of it's just this is just a bear market, but one of the issues for Hex is that Hex and PulseChain, you know, they're like twins, they're like symbiotic. Well, they're like Siamese twins. They're connected. So until we get that testnet v3, it hurts. It hurts the Siamese twin. You know, until we get that PulseChain launch, it hurts the Siamese twin. Equally, the moment we get testnet v3, well, that's just oxygen going to the Siamese. I don't know where I was going with this Siamese twin analogy, but you know, you get my point.
I think it works perfect. It's not even out yet, right? It's not even out. It hurts. It makes some trouble, and Hex is the one who is suffering right now. This is how I would understand it. Let's look into the chat again, and here we have something really interesting, Powerman, because in a couple of days it's the new year, and he's questioning New Year pump or New Year dump. What is your gut feeling?
Well, my gut feeling says we'll get testnet v3 in January, and I think that most people think we will see an instant rise in the price of Hex the moment we get testnet v3, because then effectively we've got the timescale, as I keep mentioning. So I think that's really the moment. I hear rumors that testnet v3 is now already being tested privately. Richard can see what's going on. You can only assume that he might move to protect the price, because it's back to this ceiling and floor thing, which I clarified. Yeah, so there will be investors. It could be the Godwell, could be anyone that decides. It could be Rackham that decides they're going to protect the price so the floor doesn't go down too much further, and or we'll get testnet v3 or both. I think that when we get the tide turn, it is going to be very violent. It's going to be very obvious, and people will be going, and this is how it works with crypto, and everyone's going to be thinking, I wish I'd bought some more. I wish I'd bought some more. You know, people are very, very greedy, and they're very, very greedy at both ends of the telescope. So when Hex was 50 cents, we buy into the channels that were telling us that it would go to $1 or that you know, and then equally now we're in the bear market. The bear market narrative is the popular one. It's the fashionable one. It's the dominant one. So I try to look for the positive narrative as well, but it's the dominant one. It's the fashionable one, and you're unfashionable if you're not being bearish now. But realistically, if we went back to September 2021, when Hex was 56 cents, and we all jumped in Matty's DeLoreans and went forward to now and said, right, okay, so the price has gone all the way down. I'm just having a look now. It's like it's under 2 cents now, 1.8, 1.9 cents. Are you going to buy? And people would just sell the houses. But because we've been stuck in this negative narrative now for over a year, that's why it's called capitulation. Capitulation. I was looking up the definition of capitulation today. It means surrender. It means it's a military term. It means giving everything away and surrendering. And so we want to surrender now. But if we were being forward in time with Matty's DeLorean from September 2021 to today, we'd all go, what's everyone doing? Why aren't they buying Hex? Can you believe it? You know, can you believe the price? And we've got PulseChain around the corner, so we're getting a doubling. I think it's insane. I just think it's just amazing. I think it's an opportunity, and I think that it's been an opportunity for me to get a lot more hex than I ever planned to. I had a target in mind. I mean, it won't be as much as you as a hex OG, obviously, you know, and I'm not bragging or anything. I had a target in mind, and I've got 2.5 times more than my target. And really, I should diversify a bit more, but yeah, I just can't resist hex at these prices.
Well, 2.5x is really not much in hex. I have seen hex doing 10,000 of x, so I think you're doing right here to hold on. I think it's really interesting what Deity is saying. Hex FUD and FOMO is classical human market psychology. It's brilliant. When hex is really low, like right now, 2 cents, people are saying, no, I'm gonna wait for 0.07 cents, somebody's saying, right, or 1 cent, it doesn't matter. And when the price is really, really high, people will not sell, they will wait until it is like $12 or whatever. So the greed really works on both sides here.
Yeah, totally. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's the deja vu thing, and I've seen it in a couple of bear markets before. And when Tone Vase was calling 1500, and at the time he had a good track record. All the people that predict, they tend to have a good track record until they have a bad track record. But you know, he was saying 1500, so some people go, well, 750. You know, there's always that person that front runs. So if hex did go, so go to the person asking where hex would go. So if it goes to 1 cent, people will be wanting 0.1 cent. You know, it never ends. But at some point, we're going to have a violent reversal, and I don't think it'll be long. I think it'll be January. I can't see how it won't be January. And having such a suppressed price of hex, when we do get the narrative flip, once we do get testnet v3, it's going to be so obvious. And yes, is that something for everyone to look forward to? I think we're all going to wake up, check our MetaMask wallet, or go onto CoinMarketCap or wherever you check your hex price, and it's just going to be like, oh wow, so what's happened there? And then you go and look for the narrative, and that's what I'm saying about the narrative flip. There'll be a narrative flip. There'll be something. It'll be something. I think that's how it'll go. Yeah, and then it's very permanent. Because the thing about somebody like Rackham protecting the price, we've seen that before. The price goes up for a few days, and then people just start selling into it, don't they? People sell into it. So we really just need that narrative flip, but we will get it. And as I say, there's loads of cryptos that are going to do insanely well come the bull market. They've gone down a lot more than hex, and yes, there's nothing to worry about.
And do you think Richard Hart would have to change his marketing a little bit in order to make this narrative flip? Because we have MG here in the chat. He's saying, Richard working hard, advertising more for Louis Vuitton and Pulse, compared to Pulse and Hex these days, ball and shoot corn when others are in max pain, not good visuals. So to make my point on this comment here, Richard Hart made Hex, and Hex did 10,000x in 2 years. Nobody was talking about it. He then made the PulseChain sacrifice, and it was able to gather 27 million for medical research, and 1 article was basically written, so no coverage at all. And Richard Hart, he wants to change the world, but he can only change the world when people participate. And that's why he said, well, if people want me to be funny, stupid, then I will stupid. But once I grab their attention, then they are in Hex, and then they are forced to make gains, basically. So what do you think about the outrage marketing? Is it working? And then the second one, does Richard Hart has to change that in order to flip this narrative?
Yeah, thanks. And there's another good question. For your viewers are very intelligent. Your MG made another really good. So are mine, of course. So are mine. But MG made a very good question there about the outrage marketing and things. Yeah. So I've expressed my views about outrage marketing. One of the nice things about having a channel is you can get off your chest what you think about things, and then you can move on and things. But I did do a whole stream on outrage marketing. So if anyone wants to watch that, just go back onto my channel. But and I know for a fact, that Richard saw it, and he's still following me. But it's like, if I keep going on about it, I'm sure he won't. But I've made my views known. Funnily enough, the outrage marketing is an interesting one because it links to the narrative flip. Because once we get PulseChain, then even once we get testnet v3, but certainly once we get PulseChain, the twerking, which is how I sort of distill the outrage marketing, is the twerking. The twerking will seem justified. I think the issue now is, at the moment, is no timescales is a red flag for investors. So they're not greatly happy. So at the moment, the twerking seems misplaced. I refer to, I used to race motorbikes professionally, and I was quite good, obviously. I wasn't quite as good as some of the people I got to race with. And they were so good that they could, you know, multiple world champions and things. They were so good that they could afford to be arrogant. So what I'm saying is, sorry, to get to the point, the moment we get to testnet v3, the twerking will seem justified. And you watch how the moment we get to testnet v3, anyone who might be slightly irritated by the twerking, shall we say, like Crypto 7, maybe it's because I'm too old or whatever, yeah, I'm slightly irritated by it, Richard. You watch how I won't be irritated with it once we get Pulse testnet v3, and you bet I won't be irritated with his twerking once we get PulseChain, and once he makes me millions and makes my kids millions. I'm not going to be irritated by whatever he does then. And I think that the whole outrage marketing thing, and I was thinking about it a bit more, when I think it's going to really make sense, when the final building block around the outrage marketing makes sense, because I know that you're a fan of it, by the way. I know you're a proponent. I saw your stream on that. I know it's one of the things we sort of disagreed on, and I thought, oh, I see, okay, but that's fine. I like people disagree. We can't always agree. It's not necessary. And people who watch my streams, I've got 6,500 subscribers now. Do subscribe to A-Bit as well, because he's a really nice guy, a really positive guy. I like your consistency. But I noticed that I don't know if you picked up did you? Because you did something saying about how the outrage marketing was the way to go and at all times and things. And it was a couple of days after I did my stream about outrage marketing. And I thought maybe you were responding to that, which was cool. That was fine. But I thought maybe that's what you were doing. Was that what's happened there, or was it just a coincidence?
No, I was not a coincidence. I was not aware of your stream.
Okay, just a coincidence. There you go. That's what happens. You see, you think, oh, he's seen my stream, and he's like, he's no. But it was funny because it was literally a day or two later after my outrage stream that I saw you tweeting about how outrage marketing was the way to go. When I think that outrage marketing will make sense is when we get the museum. When we get the museum, I've got a theory that all those clothes are going to appear in the museum. All those man bags, all those things, they're going to be in the museum. And I think that's going to be just really, we say in the UK here, don't misunderstand, a bit really camp, really nice, sort of like really, the girls are going to love it. They're going to want to go to the museum. They're going to drag their boyfriends. The boyfriends are going to want to go because they've got Hex. And it's just like, it's just going to be like can you imagine how cool the museum's going to be? But
I think the museum, they will have a big problem with all the Hexicans pilgering to this place all the time.
Should we meet up at the museum and have a drink? Yeah. Who's up?
Oh, yeah,
who on the smash the likes if you fancy meeting up with Crypto 7 and A-Bit for a drink on the museum? I bet there'll be like a rooftop bar or something. I'll see you there, man. I love it. And I think that what I'm sort of saying is I think the museum's going to be really sort of we say tongue in cheek in the UK. It's just going to be slapstick. It's going to be fun. And I think that's when people are going to realize that Richard wasn't taking himself too seriously. Hexo did a stream on this where he sort of said like Dolly Parton used to sort of do certain things to get attention, but she wasn't taking herself seriously. She just wanted the attention because to sell her records. And Richard wants the attention to sell his crypto, to get his crypto adopted, I should say, so that people have got trustless yield where you actually get to keep, yield where you don't give people your keys like Celsius, etc. And no, I think the museum is going to be really good. And I think that's when the outrage marketing is going to make sense. I think most of the museum will just be a lot of fun, and people will realize, okay, Richard isn't taking himself too seriously here. I think there'll be like mannequins of Richard dressed up and things, and people will realize, yeah, okay, he's not. I just think that, and as I say, on the back of the success of testnet v3 and PulseChain and things, it'll all just and the price of Hex just going to the moon, as I think it will in the next 3 to 6 months. Then I just think I think the outrage marketing will make more sense then. Then in terms of what he does from there, I don't know. He could relax it off completely, go back to a black t-shirt like he used to wear and things. He could just he could relax it off, or he could decide to continue it. I personally, if I was advising him on PR, which obviously I'm not, then I would say it's an opportunity to sophisticate. Then I think he could drop it then, but I think that he's shaken that tree, if you like. I think he could be more sophisticated. For instance, all the big channels, as soon as we get testnet v3, all the big channels are going to want him on and things. So he doesn't need to be doing debates with Bitcoin maxis or other things. And I think he's just going to get so much natural attention anyway for his cryptos then.
I think so too. But Richard is in his own head, and we do not know if he will see the situation where he says, okay, now everybody will bring me on because PulseChain is out now. Let's relax a little bit and go back to the black shirt and stop all the twerking. Obviously, people love to talk about the outrage marketing because it is something that gives them something to talk about. People love to talk about the Kardashians. It's an upside down world outside. They should rather learn something valuable, but all we do is watch TV. And you see it here on the comments as well. It's really not liked by a lot of people, the outrage marketing. I have loved it from the beginning. And just recently, I was talking to a marketing expert who is in HEX since a long time. And he said that he also does not agree with Richard Hart's outrage marketing. The only reason why it worked for Richard is because HEX is a 100% perfect product. And it is the product that was carrying everything. And then the outrage marketing, this is Richard's idea. I said it before, is supposed to bring all the people in because 10,000x of HEX did not do anything. 27 million do medical research did not do anything. So he's like desperately looking for something that grabs the attentions. And the number one viewed person right now, for example, is who is this bald guy? I forgot. Andrew Tate. And everybody's looking them up, and he's really outrageous. So we see in the real world that it is working. And I think, like you are right, when PulseChain launches, when all the attention is on Richard Hart, I think he will maybe come down a little bit with the outrage marketing in the future.
Yeah, so, and once we get to the bull market, the price action will trump all outrage marketing or everything else he might be wanting to do. You know, any antics that Andrew Tate could do or anything else. I think once PulseChain is out and performing even anything remotely like as well as we all think it will, then I think he could completely. The outrage marketing, whether he continues it or not, will be an irrelevance to the attention he'll get from PulseChain, and that's when I think he'll, his Twitter following will be in the millions and instead of the hundreds of thousands and things.
I want to now. We are not at the end of our stream. My stream is normally like 1 hour. We can do it way longer. So I want to start bringing some. Some ideas out there, maybe getting some excitement of the people. And that's why I want to talk about Richard's calling the top twice. And here I said it to my German community already. I think I've never said it here in the English language. So what does Richard Hart do when he calls the top? In 2017, basically he had nowhere to go if he would have sold Bitcoin or Ethereum, right? HEX was not out yet. PulseChain was not even an idea. So there was nowhere to go. In 2021, in this bull market now, the situation is a little bit different, right? So we have HEX is out. He knows that PulseChain, a layer one solution that's going to dominate the market, it's going to be out in the future. So what do you think Richard Hart is doing with his top calls and maybe with all this financial energy that is saved up? Because all the sacrifice money, for example, there's also a lot of stable coins sitting in there that did not lose in value during this bear market. So what do you go ahead with my conclusion that maybe Richard Hart will pump all and everything into PulseChain?
Oh, I like that idea. I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure. Would he put some money into PulseChain? Probably. Yeah. Yeah, that would be marvelous, wouldn't it?
I definitely like when founders are holders of their own project. Tesla does that. Elon Musk holds a lot of shares, right? And we do not like to see him sell. And this is what Richard does perfectly. He never sells any crypto. It makes his project wholesome. And now I really want to bring out the idea to Richard Hart. If you call the top twice, why not deploy all this financial energy in coins that we all love, like HEX, PulseChain, PulseX? So this is just an idea for the people out there. So maybe we can also talk about PulseChain, PulseX. They are not out yet. People talk about them a lot, and they want to know what's going to outperform the one or the other. Do you think PulseChain is going to outperform or PulseX? What is your story behind it?
Well, we know the narrative, and I think we all know the narrative that we've all been peddling for a couple of years now, or whatever it is. That investors like PLS more because they understand layer ones, and people are naturally attracted to layer ones, and it's just like big tick straight away. Proof of stake layer one, etc. The McDonald's horizontal scaling and all those arguments. We know all that, and then and then PLSX, but something massive has happened since we've all made the argument that PLS will be more popular than PLSX, and that's of course that we've had a massive migration away from centralized exchanges, and the popularity of decentralized exchanges has just gone through the roof. And I mean, I used an analogy in one of my streams recently. It's a bit like the guy that sets up a vegetarian restaurant the week before the government makes eating meat illegal. Suddenly, he was popular before, yeah. So he's got this restaurant in trendy part of Mexico or New York or London where most people are vegetarian. He's got this restaurant and it's doing quite well. And then the government goes, you can't eat meat anymore. Boom. That's the kind of shift in demand that PLSX is going to have. And it goes back to the narrative thing, which has been a constant theme of this stream today. So the narrative is around decentralized exchanges. The narrative is around that. And so the fact that Rich is wheeling one out just when it's most needed is absolutely crazy. So don't count. I think that PLSX is now a proper contender to possibly do as well or better than PLS. I mentioned this to Crypto Coffee, and I think he was like, "Oh, not sure about that." I think he's more sacrificed in PLS. No, I'm joking, but I think he is.
And you're the other way around. You're a little bit more.
Yeah. But he's open about it, and I'm open about it. No, but I'm joking because I Crypto Coffee and I get on really well. But it's quite funny, yeah, because I am, but stupidly. But now I'm thinking, oh, maybe it was dumb luck, but I sacrificed more for PLSX. So it's just crazy. It's a question I'd like to ask Richard. I mean, could he have predicted this, that people would have finally turned their back on centralized exchanges? But we're shooting in a barrel now with PLSX. So if you sacrifice for PLSX, if you've got tired of waiting, well, I got good news for you. I've also got good news for people that are wanting to trade all their PLSX or PLS on launch day, or they want to buy PLS because they're bought into the narrative around PLS. Well, the good news is Solana is looking really bad at the moment. So the developers are looking for somewhere else to go. And all the NFTs that were getting built and traded on Solana, they're all looking for somewhere else to go. So I can't wait till we've got PulseChain, because come to us, guys, come to us,
And it is the biggest airdrop in crypto history. All our coins will be there from the beginning, which means, in my idea, PulseChain will have people there using it right away. When Ethereum started a couple of years ago, this was a little bit different, right? The people first had to see the innovation and then go into Ethereum. Well, this all leads up to PulseChain being used a lot, PulseX being used a lot, and we've discussed it before. Uniswap was huge this year for the bull market. It made the bull market possible, basically. And now we ask the question if Richard Hart was maybe anticipating something like this, where centralized exchanges will lose ground and DeFi will explode like this. And this is obviously playing into the hand of PulseX here. And I think the main driver, and there are two actually, why PulseX will outperform PulseChain in the long run is because more people sacrifice for PulseX. That's the coin they love. And then with all the gains they make from, let's say, the incentive token, what are you going to buy? You buy the token that you love, and that's maybe more PulseX. So this was the first narrative, the little bit weaker one. The second one is that, yes, Uniswap had more volume than Coinbase. And if this continues, if this trend continues, we will have tons and tons of volume in PulseX, which will result in a beautiful buy and burn function that will buy up every single day and drives up the price. And this is my narrative why I believe PulseX will outperform PulseChain in the long run.
Yeah, great. Well, fantastic. There you go. So that's going to be music to the ears of people that only sacrifice for PLSX. And my comments about how PLSX is just unbelievably well positioned. I used the analogy of the vegetarian restaurant, didn't I? Yeah. It was doing okay. It was in a trendy part of town where most people were vegetarian, and now internationally we've outlawed red meat eating. How are you going to do? It's the same thing. Everyone's left the centralized exchanges. I mean, I think I must be the only person that's left any money on Binance. It's going to be fantastic, Uniswap has overtaken Coinbase. Oh my God. So how's PLSX going to do? It's going to do insanely well.
Well, then there is also something else that I got from your stream yesterday, because you were talking about diversifying. And I know a lot of Hexicans, myself as well, in the past also always said diversifying sucks. Why would you have less gains? These are Richard Hart's words. But then with the PulseChain sacrifice, with the PulseX sacrifice, it made click for a lot of people that they realized, well, in the future, we will have PulseChain. With PulseChain, there comes this whole new ecosystem and maybe other coins. And this maximalism got loose and loose and loose. And right now, with Max Payne being around, this maximalism is really, really present again. So people do not want to diversify. What would you tell a Hexican that is a maximalist why this might be a good idea to diversify? Because you already said Hex and PulseChain, they are like sisters, right?
Yeah, this is another great question. I don't know why haven't we streamed together before? You really put so a lot of effort in. A lot of people, they just sort of like, they'll just like throw a guest on. I've found in our community, and you've like spent ages thinking about questions. I mean, it's what I do as well, but I thought I was the only one. I just really appreciate the fact you spent some time thinking about this stream. And yeah, I mean, I've got a good community. We get like in my last stream, I got over 200 live viewers again. So if you're watching from the Crypto 7 community, make sure to show some love to Abit. Give him a sub and tap that bell as well, because otherwise you've got about as much chance of seeing his posts as a chicken going through a fox convention. Yeah, so sorry, what was the question again? It's getting late here in the UK.
The question was, and now I have to find it as well, how to diversify. Like maximalists, we never diversify, we only loved Hex, and then we had the idea, okay, we will diversify in the future. What would you tell a maximalist why it is smart to diversify?
Yeah, well, tell the guy that there's so many ways I could answer this question. I could talk on it for hours, but tell the guy that got back from a 6 months holiday who was all in on Luna that he was all in on Luna. He'd made 12 million. I think it was 12 million. I don't know if you saw it on TikTok. It was going viral. He'd made 12 million in Bitcoin the last cycle. He put it all into Luna, and then he went on a long holiday in a bear market, which you should never do. You should go on holiday in bull markets, not in bear markets. And then he checked his Trezor, and he'd lost everything, and he was crying. So that's why, because you just never know. Or tell the guy that was a Celsius maxi because Kevin O'Leary and whoever else said that Celsius was safe and some sports star or whatever. You want to be diversified. So Richard Hart is diversified. I saw a stream with him recently where the interviewer said, "So are you in Bitcoin?" And he was like, "Man, are you joking, man? I wouldn't be in that shit coin, blah, blah, blah. Limp dick gains, blah, blah, blah." And then the interviewer said, "Are you in Ethereum?" And he pretended he hadn't heard. And then he goes, "Are you in Ethereum?" And he goes, "I never talk about my coins, man. Never talk about my investments." In other words, he's in Ethereum. Okay, so Richard Hart is diversified. But yeah, I think that Johnny Chaos put it really well about this issue. So I'm diversified outside of the RH ecosystem. So I'm invested in what I'm invested in. So if I invest in something else, I'm not selling Hex. Same way as if I get another car, I'm not selling Hex to get my car. I mean, I've never sold Hex in my life. Not that it's a crime to sell your Hex. That's the whole idea. You're meant to. I'm not saying that you shouldn't sell your Hex or you should be max staked or anything else. But I have never sold a Hex. I've given some Hex away, but I've never sold a Hex. But I mean, yeah. So where was I going with that? Yeah. So I think that it's very important to be. I think you should be diversified. I know. In fact, funnily enough, I was speaking to somebody today who said he's all in. He's a maxi on RH, and I was like, yeah. Well, I mean, it's my big play, but it's a big risk. It's a big risk to be in just one crypto.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I mean, I'm waking up as well right now because with Hex, yes, it made me financially free, and Richard Hart changed my life with all this knowledge that he was giving me. But today, I can look at my portfolio being now down 96%, and I'm crying a lot. But luckily, I diversified into other projects, and now my Hex portfolio is close to this other project as well. And right now, I'm obviously talking about ASIC plus Bitcoin plus Dogecoin. I got slandered a lot by the Hex community that I'm now also talking about other coins besides HEX. And I think it's really important to bring this message out that, we can all coexist. There is not only one blockchain, there are many. We will live in a multi-blockchain universe like in the future. And then why would you not want to participate from the gains where they are at the best right now? Because if HEX is down 96%, then I do not like to sell that, right?
Oh,
so
God,
I think
no, yeah.
diversifying really, really important.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And outside of the RH ecosystem as well, because I what I say is if you're in HEX and PulseChain and PulseX and Hedron and Icosa, you're really in one crypto. From a diversification point of view, you're in one crypto because all those cryptos are in the RH egg basket. And whilst it's possible that in certain points and things, the derivatives might do even better than HEX, etc. If HEX was to have a serious problem or PLS, then those would do even worse, as they are effectively a leverage play. So it's not to say I'm not saying don't be into the derivatives or don't be into various projects being built on PulseChain. Knock yourself out, but be aware that in terms of this diversification thing that you're saying, it's effectively still one crypto. That's what I say to get attention. Some people go, oh no, it's not, they're different cryptos. I mean, I get that they're different cryptos, but from a sort of exposure point of view, they're the same crypto. And that's why I say then when I diversify outside of it. When we get testnet v3 and PulseChain, the RH tickers are going to do so incredibly well that it's going to be very, very difficult for a lot of the cryptos that have been spawned from the community, should we say, to compete on any level. I did like that thing that Johnny Chaos, I'm sure people saw it, put on Twitter about how the bored Hexicans leave Hex to buy the latest thing that's been basically just chilled completely to the Hexicans, and then when it stops pumping because it was just a transfer of economic energy, then the new thing comes along, and then some more Hexicans sell their Hex to get the new thing, and the people that got into the yesterday's old new thing get into the today's new thing, and it just goes on and on and on. And that's just like bear market stuff, and it's very easy when you're new to crypto to get confused with that, and think, and to just look at the price action and think, well, this is moving, I've got to buy it. This is moving, I've got to buy it. But you just gotta wait. I mean, the score. You've been around the block and you've done very well in crypto, but you just got to hold your horses. And I mean, you mentioned about the OGs having lost a lot of money. That's right. It must look painful, particularly if they check the dollar value. For me, I've always lost money in Hex because I made the top. In Hex and I've been buying down. So I don't make the mistake of ever looking at my dollar value in my crypto. All I have targets. And earlier, by the way, I didn't mean I'd got a 2.5x in Hex. I meant I've got 2.5x times more. So I had a target of how many Hex I wanted, and I've exceeded that by 2.5. And so that's all I look at. So I'm like, because I think crypto is more important than dollars. So for me, it's like, yay, great, I've got 2 million Hex now, or whatever it is, And as I say, not much compared to an OG, but it's good for me. And the same thing with other cryptos I've got my eyes on.
Yes, 100%. Now I understand how you meant the 2.5x, and this is how I see it with Hex as well. I only look at the number of Hex that I have, and today, since I'm staked for an average of 7 years, and most of my Hex is staked out long, today I have more Hex than I ever had before. There's a little disclaimer here, I cannot touch it, right? This is the philosophy of Hex. You are being staked, you are saved from yourself. You can not sell when you want, or you have to emerge and stake, and this is then just punishing you more. And then yesterday I was talking to somebody who was fairly new in Hex, but totally understands the crypto, the situation. He's saying, well, look at all the Hexicans. They're staked for an average of 6.5 years. Why are they crying that the price is down? Aren't they not able to sell anyways? So he was analyzing it correctly. And when it comes to Johnny Chaos, I think it's not the Hexicans that are selling the price down. It's all the people that hold their hex liquid, like traders, for example, or short-term minded people. When it comes to a Hexican, for me, a Hexican is somebody who's like long-term believer into the project, really uses the staking to get more hex, like I'm doing it right now as well.
Yeah.
So
just on that, I don't know who's selling and what the motives are, and I think there could be a bit of malicious selling, and maybe even some people that have set up other cryptos are selling now to try and attract the Hexicans, because that's really the only trick they've got. That's the only tool they've got, is to try and get more Hexicans to buy their crypto. So I don't know why it is, but it doesn't really matter. The analogy I use is Hex is like your NBA team. It's like the NBA club. It's like your football club, Man United, Liverpool. That's Hex. It's the top flight football club. The community of the players, the overpaid players, if they want to fall out and sing, some players will come and go. Someone else will be made captain next year. Some players will be shown the door. Some will be sold and sacked. So that's what the community is. So the community is changing, and that's natural. And some people, like your good self, are clearly going to stay the distance. Hoddle dog, people like that, with his sat back listening to his jazz music, and there's other Hexicans that have gone and set up cryptos saying that they will support Hex and this is great for Hex, and now they don't like Hex, and we've seen all that, and others that have created cryptos which allow you to end state without being the penalty, like the whole HSI stuff. I can't see how that's a good idea, but so I just stick to RH tickers. And what I say about PulseChain is Richard has created the only criteria that are important to developers for building on PulseChain, which is, as long as it's flawless, cheaper, faster. That's all they're interested in. Anything else is a perverse incentive. The whole sacrifice stuff on PulseChain projects is a bit of a perverse incentive to bring the wrong projects forward. I think natural selection was a better approach anyway. So there'll be many good projects coming forward on PulseChain as we go forward. We just now need that testnet v3, and then we'll get the narrative flip, and then everything, and then we're going to go to the moon. It's going to be fantastic. I'm not worried at all. But for me, I'm lucky because I never made money in Hex, and all I've ever been focused on is acquiring more Hex. And at the moment, I think I'm just acquiring the Hex of the people that are selling it, because I know I am, because I got some at under 2 cents last night, and it's good stuff.
That's exactly how it works. The money goes from the impatient people to the patient people. And right now you were mentioning all the projects that will build on PulseChain. We have another comment here that is from CryptoCath33. What do you think about liquid loans? 60% of all the loan tokens. Well, this is not that interesting what will happen with the loan tokens, but what is interesting is that we have 125 projects built on top of PulseChain. We have the question of the liquid loans here, Power City, all those things. What are some things that you may find interesting when it comes to projects built on top of PulseChain?
Yeah, I'm very interested in the NFTs. I think that the NFTs will like the fact that the gas fees are so low, and I think that could allow for new emergence, because NFTs are here to stay for sure. They're going to be a big thing, big feature. Although I think that we could be a real hub for NFTs, even though Richard's not massively keen. And there's all sorts of applications for NFTs as well. It's not all just monkeys smoking cigarettes, wearing baseball caps. It's there's lots of useful applications. Whether it's protecting us from electoral fraud and something an issue they got in the States, isn't it? And or whatever else. So I'll be very interested in the projects that are coming forward, and maybe I'll take some of my PLS and PLSX profit and put it into some of these emerging PulseChain projects, particularly ones that haven't asked for a load of money in a sacrifice. I think I'd be particularly attracted to those. The ones that have got a track record, they didn't need my money, and they've got a track record of success in things. You talked about. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
We have. Oh, now I missed.
Yeah, you were a squirrel.
Oh, here we go. Tom, what diversification are being hodled besides RH tickers and Ethereum? Well, Tom, if we are saying you should buy this and this, then this is financial advice. But on our channels, you will never hear any financial advice. You will only get ideas of what is a good strategy, what is a good narrative to buy in and stuff like this. But Seven, I do not know how you handle it on your channel. Do you have?
If you just say what you like, if you just
the
say what you like,
list?
it's fine. So for instance, generally the most I speak in generalizations, but generally the top performing cryptos are layer ones. So a really good investment is a layer one, right? Then the next step is in identifying what's going to make insane gains. So that's why people are so excited about PLS. Then the next step is you want to be investing into a crypto that hasn't had a previous bull market because you know, so for instance, HEX is not realistically going to get another 10,000x in this cycle. Why then is it of interest? It's because I think it's very, very, very likely to get at least 100x to a 200x. And where I am in the world, and where I expect where your financial position as well, 100x to a 200x is going to be just fine. Thank you very much. So it's going to be very attractive to investors. So that's all guarantees its success because it's been flawless operation. It's got the Richard Hart narrative around it, PulseChain, etc. So HEX is a really good bet. But going back to it, so the nearer a crypto launches to a bull market, literally the nearer, the better it does. That's one of the reasons why people speculate that Richard might be timing the market, because the nearer he launches to the bull market, the better PLS and PLSX will do. And so really, although we get frustrated because we're like lizard brains, we're impatient, aren't we? I think a lot of Hexicans are thrill seekers and we get impatient, but actually Richard knows what he's doing. The nearer he launches to the bull market, the better it'll do. So you're looking at layer ones that haven't had a bull market, that are proof of stake, etc. Aptos is a really good one. So that's one of the ones that I like. Yeah, that's one of the ones I like. So I've been picking up a bit about that to be diversified, for instance. I'm convinced that Cardano is going to do very, very well in this bull market again. I reckon an African country will probably adopt it as a national currency. It's the hub for AI. It's really, really good. I think Cardano will be good as well. It's another safe bet for you. And then there's lots of things around the metaverse I like. I mentioned Gala. I mean, Gala has gone down a lot, so that's another one. But anyway, we're here to talk about RH tickers. But if I was diversifying, Gala, Galaxy, GAL, XE, that's a good one. Aptos, these are the sorts of things that I am picking up. ApeCoin, Decentraland, Sandbox, these sort of things. They're going to do very well as well in the next bull market.
I think it's great that you talk openly about the things that you like. How I have seen other YouTubers that are not in HEX at all doing it, like the old YouTubers, I would say, they have like a chart diagram where they say, okay, I like this coin that much, I have that coin in my portfolio that many percent. So doing it really, really specific. We have never done that, but I think all the people already know what I like to hodl, what Crypto Sparbuch is hodling. You will find that just in all of those thumbnails. The ticker symbols that you see in the thumbnails, these are the ones that we really, really, really like. Crypto 7, I think this was an amazing stream. It's going on for 1.5 hours now, and I would love to have you back as soon as possible. Obviously, what are one of the things that you would like to tell our community members on Crypto Sparbuch or KSB TV?
Yeah, well, this feels like the capitulation event for HEX for me. I've done 2 bear markets before. This is, like when Keanu Reeves sees the cat walk past in the Matrix movie, and she goes, "That's weird," and she goes, "What's weird?" That cat, it looked just like the previous cat. And she goes, "Did it look just like the cat, or was it the cat?" And he goes, "I think it was the cat." Well, I'm getting that deja vu moment right now. HEX is bottoming. I think this is it. This is your opportunity. This is your chance to make life-changing wealth. That would be my sign-off.
I think those are perfect words, really bringing up some hopium again from this negative stream that we had today in this negative world that we are living on right now. The bear market is flushing out all the people and bringing out the worst out of the people. So we are trying to always end it with something positive, and that's what you did. Thank you so much, Crypto 7. Thanks for everybody in the chat. Please do not forget to like and subscribe. And like Seven is saying, it is really important that you actually click the bell, because like Crypto7, I'm also really unregular. Sometimes I'm on HEX streaming, on HEX German, on KSB TV, on Crypto Sparbook. You see there are a lot of YouTube channels where I'm around, so definitely click the bell so you never miss another show. Crypto7, thanks for being here. It was a great discussion.
Can I just say I really enjoyed it, and I'd very much like to have you on my show sometime, and come back on yours. So let's make this a regular thing. Really enjoyed talking to you. I could talk to you all day. I didn't realize we've been talking for nearly an hour and a half. This has been fantastic. Do like and subscribe, bell button all for HEX. Fantastic guy, just the type of person you want to be listening to at the bottom of a bear market. That positivity that's going to get you through. Fantastic. Thanks very much, man.
Thank you, guys. I will now sign off. See you all. Bye.